But don't let the dark room scare you or lull you into a nap. We have the lights off because we have a lot of video we're going to show you today. But hopefully we can keep you engaged enough so you're not falling asleep in the dark here. But I think you'll find this interesting. So welcome. We'd like to welcome you to our discussion today on a holistic approach to academic computing, talking about how librarians and instructional technologists are better working together. So before we begin, I just want to introduce the panel up here that are speaking today. My name is Denise Gray, and I'm an instructional technologist that works at the Harvard Law School in the library.
I'm Judy Casey, and I'm Karen Stornman.
So we're really excited to be here today for a talk about a topic that we've been thinking a great deal about. We've been trying to think differently about the way we, that is the administrative and library staff, can support faculty and students with the production and exchange of knowledge while cultivating strong academic networks and collaborations. How can we work more collectively to make resources and technologies available? It should be noted that this presentation offers our thoughts on what could be at HLS in the near future. HLS is in a period of transition right now with a newly appointed dean, a library and organizational transition, and a new CIO that we saw today at the keynote, John Pelfrey, and a new CIO of ITS. While these senior positions are determining the strategic direction that HLS will move in the future, the ideas we present today are some of the thoughts that we are offering these senior staff members as recommendations for how we might improve our service to faculty in the future. We have witnessed over the years that traditionally there are many teams of support involved working in silos as experts with developed skill sets, each usually situated within individual departments. They deliver the best service and support to faculty and students, but within the confines of their own specialties. Each unit works optimally, but in isolation from one another. Units like media services, instructional technology, ITS, the library, amongst others. We should figure out a better way of working more closely together so we aren't duplicating efforts and can support one another. In addition, from a faculty member's point of view, it might be confusing and frustrating to be bounced around trying to figure out the appropriate contact to service instructional and academic needs. So our new CIO, Ben Gosherin, articulates this point beautifully, so we invited him on camera to discuss this concept.
My name is Ben Gosherin. I am the CIO for the law school, and CIO stands for Chief Information Officer. It's very clear to me, and I think clear to many other people in the school, that whatever technology you use in the context of teaching and learning and the creation and the exchange of knowledge in the law school is going to be sitting on top of the infrastructure that the CIO runs. And so from that standpoint, I'm very much tuning into those conversations. We, meaning the people who provide service, don't take anywhere near as much time as we should to step back, observe, look at how people experience us in the way we deliver service. And we have been, in whichever way it happens, we've been set up to think within the boundaries that have grown around us. There's these departments and these groups, and as an IT department, we do IT things. And if you're going to have IT questions, you should come to the IT department. That's how we think. And then you look at it from the person needing help, needing a service. And next thing you know, you have to, as an individual, parse through in your head, is this an IT problem or is it not an IT problem? If it's an IT problem, what kind of problem is it, and who do I go to with this problem? If it's not, which department is the best department to go talk to? And it becomes insanely complicated. And again, it goes back to until all of the people that provide service get a view into the consumer of service experience of that. You don't get it. You're trying to optimize at your level. Oh, I'm going to be the best IT service person I can be. That's great, and in many ways that's needed no matter what. But think beyond that. Start thinking, if you were to serve a community in a different way, if you were to stop thinking about those boundaries, and start thinking about a more holistic approach to serving a certain group of people, how would you approach it? Stop, forget all the things you've learned, and that's probably one of the biggest challenge for people. So forget what you know, forget what you learned, forget how the world is structured today. If you're given a blank page, you can go and think about the best way to do this. And by the way, instead of thinking of it on your own, why don't we go ask those people that we're supposed to serve? Why don't we take the time to sit down and not lead them down the path for, to get to a predefined answer that we want to get to, but really observe. That goes back to my point about having people who are able, capable, have the practice of observing behaviors and really craft your service in the way you organize yourself around it. That one. And so that's a big deal. Because it leads to reorganizing, it leads to pretty dramatic change, which are always a little scary to people. But if you put them in the right context with the right backdrop, that on the other end of these conversations, work may not be tremendously more difficult. It may actually be simpler than it is today. And certainly for the people receiving the service, things may be tremendously better.
So as supporting staff, each of us must of course optimize at each of our individual and departmental levels. However, we should also reflect on a different approach to supporting our faculty, working as individuals and collaborators. With faculty, we must continue with that retail approach where we reach out and individually to faculty, one-on-one, to listen and be supportive of things specifically important to them. But we could be better working together with our collective approach. If we agree we could be better working more collectively with a holistic approach to faculty support, what technologies and resources should we focus on specifically that will help differentiate the school from others? So we've asked Ben, because he went further in our conversation, to articulate what exactly he thinks we should be focusing on.
Where our IT resources and cycles are best spent is to really think about how do we evolve technology that is specific to the law school environment to support the law school and become more of an asset to differentiate the law school, as a school. There are two very simple and clear areas of focus in my mind. One is we, the collective of faculty and students and members of this community, create incredible intellectual property assets. And our responsibility from a technology standpoint, and sort of going beyond my core IT responsibility, sort of generally from technology infrastructure in this school, one of the key focus had better be to support the most efficient creation and distribution and consumption of that knowledge. The other piece is another one that sort of happened out there, in the broader sort of private sector and the rest of the world, but I think has always been here in higher ed, never maybe acknowledged to the level that it is, or maybe now, which is, it's the people. It's the people themselves, who they are, it's the interactions, and the value that you get in the exchange. The boundaries of Harvard Law School are not the campus. The boundaries of Harvard Law School is the world, and as I'm assuming is the case for every other law school. And therefore, we need to be able to support participants from anywhere at any time in the world. And it manifests itself in a variety of interesting ways, one of which is we've got a pretty sizable set of clinics. Some of these clinics have people that work in different corners of the world. We have to be able to provide them support wherever they may be, in a cyber cafe in some very remote, location in the world. Be able to give them access to their clinical environment in a safe, secure, way, with the full set of information that they need to be able to do the work they do. So, it's a whole set of things that come into this, but again, knowledge creation and consumption, and then supporting the people network, the collaboration with the team.
So we're at the beginning stages at HLS, trying to make our support of faculty and students tremendously better, to create a unique package of services that are tailored to meet individual faculty needs and preferences, to support knowledge creation and consumption, and collaboration and the exchange of knowledge. We're aspiring to make resources and technologies available while organizing both formally and informally from our clients' point of view. What do they need and care about? Our idea is to try not to think in terms of delivering service in silos of specialties, where the onus is on the person needing the help to figure out which person and/or department is the right one to contact. It's a somewhat radical approach, one where all the supporting cast members have to think differently and holistically. June's going to continue our conversation.
Good afternoon. I'm June Casey, and I'm going to be talking about providing library and serving library and faculty, library and technology needs to faculty in the retail mode. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be providing, through a series of videos, a model of our existing faculty service system. I'm going to present a series of video interviews with one of our faculty who volunteered to help us, and also with some of the people who provide services, academic technology librarians, to him. So today, this afternoon, my remarks are going to be brief. I'm going to let the videos do most of the talking, and then when I'm done, Karen's going to introduce our new model for triaging our service supply chain. So let's begin with an introduction by one of our faculty, Robert Bourdon.
I'm Bob Bourdon, and I teach negotiation ADR. Actually, I'm the director of the school's clinical program in negotiation and mediation. We make, or I make, I guess, in my clinic more broadly, makes tremendous use of all sorts of resources outside of our little department in terms of technology, need for videotaping, need for research help, and it's been very exciting for me to be able to work with the people at Harvard who are tasked with those responsibilities to figure out ways that we can deliver services to students better, make it easier for them, make it easier for us, and keep all the material innovative.
Fully appreciating how different constituents in your community experience technology and how their specific needs of technology need to be met differently. And I have to give credit to many years spent with people that came from a more creative background, a design background, and actually people that came from what we used to call in the place I worked before, user experience background. So these were people with PhDs in psychology, PhDs in anthropology, and really applied their expertise to observing people in context, and observing people in the context of the things they do every day. Not just in their use of technology, but how do you work? How do you set up your workspace? What matters to you? And it provided such a rich insight into people's experience, people's wants, people's needs of technology, that as a general technologist before. I had never been exposed to it. You know, and I think very much, you know, I've worked in, you know, with this kind of perspective across many different industries, but very true, and even more so probably in an environment like this one, is understanding how people experience technology or want to experience technology is just paramount.
Bob Bordone is a frequent user of our services, be it production, actual day-to-day services, computer projection, VHS, DVD projection. Really runs a gamut of presentation styles. Again, the only thing that he hasn't used to this point is video conferencing, which I see educators using more and more as time goes on.
My name is Denise Gray. I've been working at the Harvard Law School since 2001 as an instructional technologist and analyst. Often people will confuse academic computing with simply training or supporting the how-tos of how to use technology with instruction, when it's much more than that. That's a part of it, but it starts with sitting down with a faculty member, with understanding what it is they're trying to do in the classroom, and really trying to get a total picture of what it is they're trying to accomplish. And then we'll talk about, you know, what can we do to help support what it is that you're trying to do in the classroom. And that will certainly at times involve technology, but oftentimes in those conversations, the faculty member identifies a lot of other things that are outside of my purview. But it's a wonderful role for me to be in personally, because I get to understand the total picture of what it is they're trying to do in the classroom. I can offer suggestions in my area of expertise of how we can help support that. But anything that's outside of my purview, I can then contact the appropriate departments, the people within those departments, to then get in touch with the faculty member and help us support what it is we're trying to do. It's also wonderful because it opens up the dialogue with these other groups that we don't normally have contact with on a regular basis. Specifically with Professor Robert Bordone, I've worked very closely with him over the past several years. I would even say probably going back to 2002, 2003. We worked with him supporting course websites, helping him select panel assignments for his class, specific individual projects that he's interested in doing for his clinics and workshops. We work closely with media services to produce recordings for his classes. We work with him to pair him with student fellows that work with him to, you know, on discrete projects to integrate technology into his instruction. We've provided just-in-time support when he's in a panic and might need some, you know, help 10 minutes ago. We'll go and help him in any way that, in any shape that he needs during the year, and sometimes in the summer as well. So we really run the gamut of support with Bob Bordone.
And I also would like to thank Paul, who's in the back over there, and if Denise is here, but they helped us put this together and have spent countless hours helping that online form work. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
My name's June Casey, and I'm a part of a team at the Harvard Law Library. And I've helped Bob Bordone and his students in any number of ways. It started with my outreach to the clinical programs and Bob's clinical students in teaching standalone research classes for them. But from that point, I realized that there was a good idea for us to have resources embedded in wikis that would help the students collaborate. So that was one of the first what I call academic technology type of projects that I worked with for Bob. And then from there, it sprung to faculty portal for Bob with all of his research tools, and also a website with particular resources that would be helpful on ADR in general. Okay, so with our existing faculty service model. When a professor needs library or technology services, the professor has to manage, as you can see here, multiple relationships and has to intuit the service architecture. There's always been some ambiguity about who to contact for service, and there really hasn't been a system in place for explaining who does what. This has resulted in, as Denise already said, the faculty not knowing what services are available, or commonly they would have to resort to trial and error. And Bob will talk about this in a few seconds about who or what service to contact. Like with the magic 8-ball here, it's always been reply hazy, try again. There's been crossover amongst the various service sectors, but faculty communicated with the separate agents alone. For example, as Denise and I found out with something Bob was working on this past spring, 2 different staff were working for him on the same project without knowledge or coordination of our individual contributions, which had we known, it could have been a whole lot better. So we acknowledge that this is not the best system, and later on, as Karen's part of the presentation, we can propose some improvements to this particular service model. So back to the videos, I have a few more to show you, and then we'll
So when I first started teaching, which was about 10 years ago, I was not teaching a clinic, I was really just teaching a negotiation workshop. And at that point, in terms of technologies, I actually really didn't have much of a sense of who to go to. The technology needs that we had really related to videotaping of students in the negotiation workshop. And to be perfectly honest, it was an incredibly frustrating experience. Harvard Law School had old VHS cameras that were gigantic, and then we would watch the videos with our students on 13-inch screen TVs, where the volume, and half the time you wouldn't have any sound. We had these floor mics. They didn't work a lot of the time, which made it quite difficult doing a review with a student. And you'd say, well, how about focusing body language? Which body language is important for negotiation, but also what people say matters. When you did have sound, it was often really terrible. To be perfectly honest, it was pretty stunning. I mean, 1999 was not 1969, and our technology was about 1969. It was embarrassing. I sometimes felt people would come from all over the world in our summer program to run these CLE programs in the summer, and they're paying thousands of dollars, and they would be stunned by how terrible the technology was. And I couldn't help but agree with them. Probably, it's hard for me to know when, but at some point, we started to realize you couldn't actually buy those big cameras anymore. Some of the cameras were breaking. The school was actually renting cameras for our AV needs. And that's when I sat down with the people who are in the AV department at that point and said, we have to come up with a new solution. And it took a while to get the right technology to meet our needs. We had certain needs for some of our exercises. We needed to have a running time counter for the videos that we did. We needed to be able to either put the video on a CD or on a jump drive because one of our exercises is confidential. The other videotaping exercise we wanted to be able to stream onto the course website. So it took, I would say, probably 6 or 8 months with a series of meetings where the AV department would show me different options, and I would say, well, here's what works about this, and here's what doesn't work about this. And we ultimately settled on buying, I guess probably at the time, 16 Macs with these new cameras. And I don't know, probably the technology is called BTV Pro. And that's what we've been using. It really utterly transformed what we were able to do in the class. The quality is so much better. We can now watch on big screens so people can actually see themselves and hear. In fact, the very first year I used this, after I finished every review, I was sort of waiting for the students to say, this is amazing. And most of the time they would just be like, oh, thank you very much. And I'd say, so let me tell you a story about what we did last year.
I think a roadblock that I run into occasionally is just a general fear of technology. And I mean, the moment that you label anything technology or computer related, people, in my experience, have this wall that immediately comes up, regardless of what it has to do with. And it's firmly ingrained in their mind that because it's technology based, they're not either not capable of understanding it or they're unwilling. A very common teaching tool is PowerPoint, and it's surprising to me what PowerPoint means to different people. And I will get requests for 35 millimeter slide projectors because somebody's shown a PowerPoint presentation. It's just I think it's a general fear of technology, which leads to either not knowing or misunderstanding the tools that these people are using every single day. So I think some level of comfort with the tools that they use is very important.
Professor will show up with a PowerPoint and a thumb drive. They don't really know what the thumb drive is, and they want us to load it, open it, put it in slideshow, and then they say, now what do I do? And this is standing in front of the class. So there is a fear of embarrassment, but then there's some who obviously don't have that fear and will try to teach with PowerPoint, yet they didn't create it and have never used it before. Very interesting.
I love teaching, and I'm pretty proactive, and I want to stay at the cutting edge. So for me, I tend to now be searching out who does this, who can help us with this. It's also clear to me, it has become clear to me in the past few years, largely because of Denise and Ken, that there are resources that are available that most faculty are completely clueless about. Some are disinterested. I think others are maybe a little bit interested, but if it takes any of their time, they're not going to do it. And from my perspective, I think that's unfortunate, and works to my great advantage, because it means that I can actually get a disproportionate share of those resources, which in the end make my course better, make my life easier, and I think that make our program really cutting edge. But I think that it's actually on the one hand not that hard to figure out, right? You make a few phone calls and you figure out who you need to talk to. And it's not simple either in the sense that it's non-obvious. And one of the things that, as I think about informal conversations with different faculty, is it over the past few years, I think there have been a lot of advancements, but it also seems like a little bit of a moving target. So who's now in this department, and we've changed what the course website is going to look like, or the technology's changed from X, Y, and Z, and it may well be that they're actually minor changes, but I think for people who are already feeling a bit overwhelmed, not sure what the advantage is, it's like, oh, here's another change. This is why I didn't learn what they did last year, because it doesn't make sense to learn what they did last year, because it can just change again next year. So I think that that's a real challenge for media services, is to figure out how to make it really, really easy for faculty, and then how to demonstrate what the advantages might be. Because I think the bandwidth that a lot of faculty have for this is pretty narrow. And an email saying that X, Y, and Z has changed just reinforces the idea of, I'm so pleased I didn't bother learning A, B, and C last year.
One of the reasons why I really like working with Bob Bodone is that he's always been an early adopter and very enthusiastic about working with technology, even if he doesn't actually understand the technology in and of itself. And in that regard, what I really also like about Bob is that he trusts us as partners in working with him as a team, and that what we suggest for him, say, if I say, let's make a wiki, Bob will trust that I have a pedagogical reason for using the technology in the context of education, rather than, oh, we're just playing around.
I sort of think that if you just go to a lot of faculty and say, what are your needs? I don't think they would know. I don't think I would necessarily know. I mean, I'm learning a little bit more what my needs are. You know, once June's sort of healthy with the wikis and I see what's possible, that helps me say, oh, can we do this too, or can we do that too? But I'm not sure I would have ever said, let's create a wiki.
We're not alone in struggling with this. No one's sort of cracked the code of how do you do this well, consistently. But there are a few things that are sort of starting to come out in terms of people thinking through different ways to organize and different ways to think about this. And when I say we're not alone, I'm pretty sure we're not alone in the higher ed space, but we're definitely not alone if you look beyond that in the private sector. And a lot of companies constantly look at how they're organized and how they're set up to better serve their customer, whatever serve means in their context.
So why did we show you these videos? This is just one case scenario in the law school where we supplied media services, IT services, academic technology services, and library services to one particular faculty with a large number of personnel. We did a pretty good job with Bob, but we clearly could truly could triage the supply chain more effectively. For example, with Greg.
Yeah, so with Greg, when he mentioned, Greg was one of the media services people, when he mentioned he was kind of blown away that a faculty member shows up to a classroom with a thumb drive and doesn't know how to use PowerPoint. If our group had known academic computing, if the request came in and we were somehow flagged, hey, here's a professor, they've never used PowerPoint before, we could reach out to them and say, hey, we're available, we can show you how to use PowerPoint, we can be there the first class, so you don't feel nervous. But that wasn't in place at the time, so both are kind of scratching their heads in the front of the classroom, wondering what to do next.
And finally, I want to emphasize the importance, as Ben said before, of staying on target. And we as service providers, have to continuously review our users' needs. And as Ben said, it's important to continuously look at and to reassess how our users interact with the technology. And then it's up to us as the service providers to adapt our services to fit the faculty's world, not our world. And next, Karen Story-Lintz will conclude our presentation.
Hi. So when academic technology moved into the library earlier this year, June and I and the whole reference team were really happy because we've been working with Denise a lot and we felt like we had a good synergy. But we wanted to make the projects that had occurred somewhat serendipitously more accessible to our faculty and really to just do more of them. So we looked at this case study of Bob Bordone and talked about our work processes and really tried to think about our services from the user's point of view, as Ben was talking about earlier. And we realized how focused we had been on bringing the faculty and students all the excellent services we had, delivering our world to them as sort of a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And we realized that we needed to pay more attention to looking at the faculty's worlds. So part of our holistic approach means operating as a unified team, but another important part is looking at each faculty member holistically. When we focus on the individual and his or her needs and preferences, then rather than trying to find that silver bullet solution to all faculty needs, why not just tailor our services to the needs of each individual? And the great thing is that with the technology and personnel we have at our disposal, that tailoring is really possible. Now, this may be the ultimate fantasy of faculty members. They type it into Google, they get everything they need. But our reaction shouldn't be to roll our eyes and say, oh geez, they have no idea how complex our jobs are and how long it takes to do this. Instead, what we need to say is, hey, if that's their fantasy, how do we get as close to that as possible? And we think one way is to open the channels between our groups and be more collaborative, as well as delivering our individual specialties of service. So because we realize that no matter how excellent our individual services are, when they're delivered piecemeal, they can look to the user, to the faculty member, like a pile of junk that they have to then wade through. We were giving them one more task or multiple tasks to deal with rather than making their professional lives easier and better. We need to deliver our services in a way that's optimal for faculty, and that means delivering integrated services. We also realize that even though we may each only get 10 minutes with a particular professor, those 10 minutes add up when there's a long line of people who the faculty member has to deal with to get anything done. And sometimes this can lead to the faculty member really shutting down communication with various service providers, not because of any dissatisfaction with the services, but simply because there's just no more time. Or, as Bob noted, because of confusion about where it is that they're supposed to go to get to a particular service. So with this in mind, we considered a new model. In this model, there's much more pre-coordination of service, both at the service request point and again before delivery of the service or product. We can share information on faculty projects between units via shared project tracking tickets and shared notes on faculty preferences and key contacts. So, for example, when Denise talks about how she could have helped with that PowerPoint issue, well, if the media services folks had opened up a ticket and we had been alerted, you know, ding, 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 here's an academic technology issue that has come into play, then Denise could reach out. And as she said, make sure that the faculty member knows how to use it, and then afterwards it can be recorded on a faculty preferences document that faculty member now knows how to use PowerPoint, and maybe they want additional tips and tricks or something like that that we could help. And that information will be readily available to any team member who's interacting with that faculty member. Another important part of this model is that rather than imposing a single point of entry to our services on faculty, our model builds on existing contacts and relationships for initiating projects. So therefore, a team member from any unit who has a good relationship with a faculty member, whether through a successful liaison program in the library or through previous projects or just because your kids go to the same school, that person's the primary point of contact and can initiate the project whether or not the project resides completely or even partially in their unit. So, for example, Bob Bordone had a divorce negotiation exercise and it was a complex week-long exercise. And as part of that exercise, Bob needed research on divorce law, a web-based form for students to use to record negotiations data that would also crunch numbers to assess outcomes, and he needed media services to videotape the negotiations themselves. In real life, Bob and his staff dealt with at least 3 different units to get this done, and none of the units necessarily knew that anyone else was working with Bob on the same project. What if instead Bob could mention to Denise that he had a project and give her a basic sketch? Then Denise would bring in June for research and Greg for media services and Paul for application development, and together they could deliver the service in an integrated fashion. For simpler projects, the primary contact comes back to the team with a list of deliverables, and the team coordinates how to get them done without that team necessarily even having to take up the faculty member's time with additional meetings. In either case, rather than delivering components of a project piecemeal, instead we can deliver a more finished and usable product, and maybe something even better than what the faculty member originally imagined. So, to take another example, we start with this nice product. It's a faculty research portal. It includes access to library services, a contact at the library, and faculty members' favorite databases. But then we realized, well, Bob is also an extensive AV user. So why not include a place where he can get to his AV requests and make new requests and so forth right there in the same research portal? Or if we know that Bob wants to be on the cutting edge and know about the latest in instructional technology, why not add a page where Denise can drop video tutorials demonstrating possibilities she thinks may be helpful to Bob's teaching? And we can serve him as a team rather than an individual. And so Bob is aware that he has an entire group of people who are interested in his projects and are going to work together to make them happen. In addition, we need to incorporate into our model an assessment and metrics to make sure that we are staying on target and delivering the kinds of services the way the faculty like. So here's Ben, one more time, to talk a little bit about that.
As much as you should be able to rethink the way you're organizing yourself and the way departments work together. You need to also have the clear measures that tell you without a doubt that you're actually doing good. And this talks to, again, in the private sector, sort of the concept of having key metrics that you put in place, again, without too much overhead. I'll give you an example from a help desk standpoint. When people come to IT for help, it used to be that, just get the call and we do the best we can to try to solve the problem. One of the consistent message I got when I started here was it's sort of a black hole. We don't always know if our request has been captured, if it's being worked on. We don't even know if it's when people are going to come back. Well, the answer is we don't know. And so a big piece of what we've done is put in place a basic system, and it's, again, very little to no overhead. Whenever you make a request for help, you get an acknowledgement by email that says, we understand, we've got your request, and by the way, this is what we understand your request to be. Therefore, giving the opportunity for people to say, oh, no, you're a little off. Maybe we didn't communicate right. And then when the problem is solved, when we believe we've solved the problem, we sort of send an email and say, we believe we solved your problem, so we're about to close the request. And by the way, if you have a minute, give us a little feedback. And feedback that goes both in sort of a measured kind of a way, and so we have scale and satisfaction, and then open-ended, how could we have done this better? And surprisingly, we've gotten very large percentages of response. And so now we have the metrics in place, we have the system, very little overhead, and we can start thinking about the other half. And how do we do this differently?
So one other benefit of this holistic model where we're working more closely with other service departments is that we find out about ways that we can use ideas that have bubbled up in other departments. So for example, when Ben talks about this successful feedback mechanism he's implemented for IT, the faculty like it, they're used to it. Why not implement something as similar as possible for feedback on library services, rather than recreating our own new wheel? So we hope that this holistic approach will help reduce faculty confusion, will help avoid the pile of junk effect, and ideally will allow our professors to feel more comfortable in using the services that we know can help them in delivering the best in legal education. A likely additional positive consequence is that support personnel may find their work is more interesting. They have a greater appreciation and understanding of what both the faculty are doing and what their colleagues are doing. And this in turn can lead to every team member being more valuable to the enterprise as a whole. So our hope also is that over time, we will integrate our services and act more holistically without necessarily integrating our organizational structures, such that every faculty service team member has as complete a picture of a faculty member as possible, without taking any additional faculty time, and in fact saving the faculty member time. And that we will also have a more complete picture of each professor and consequently how to serve each as effectively as possible. So thank you, and we'd be delighted to answer your questions, your comments, ideas, etc.
Yes, so I have a question. I manage the elementary support in law school, which includes classroom, faculty, staff, and students. And using this approach, we originally had a similar approach where you had your faculty, staff had their pick of a person that they could go to. That turned out to be disastrous because when that person was out sick, on vacation, or anything else, the faculty wanted to know who could then help them in there. So when you suggested, well, they don't work like she does, or they don't answer the questions well as she does, or she was not nice to me. And so you end up spending so much time trying to fix the fact that the person they wanted is not there, that you now delay the amount of time that you're working on their project. So how do you anticipate dealing with issues like that when the faculty or staff or even a student becomes so dependent upon a particular staff member?
That's a great question. And we've encountered that a little bit in library services where a faculty member will latch on to a particular reference librarian for whatever reason. And it's not that they don't, I mean, they may say that they don't trust the others, but it's just because they've never used them. So I guess, and I hope that June and Denise can respond to this too, but I guess one thing I would say is that this model can actually help to introduce the faculty to additional service providers because, say, they have a great relationship with June or with Denise, and they bring up some new project, and June says, oh, well, you know, I want to help you with that, and I am going to help you with that, and I'm going to bring in this person because I know they're an expert in that area. And so then that helps the faculty member develop that new relationship a little bit. And so you build on that trust to expand the network of sort of trusted associates for that faculty member. What would you guys?
Well, I think that, yeah, we have had that same problem, as Karen said, with the old-fashioned liaison system. But this triage system, it seems like it's having a singular point of contact, which may be through some form of ticketing system. But the ticketing system is going to be out sick. And so when there's going to be a fleet of personnel behind the scenes who will be, and quite a few librarians, quite a few people in IT and media services who will jump in and come into the game. The point is so that the faculty can push their needs forward in a single system, and then the system behind the scenes serves the needs without the faculty having to they had to roll 8 balls. So I don't know who I told this person or that person, or he's out sick or she's out sick. It has been the approach of guessing who to contact for what service has really been on the, there's only one person who can do this style. And that's what we're trying to get away from. But that doesn't work. We know that. Other questions?
You mentioned the ticketing system. How is that working with the faculty?
Yeah. So the system that Ben refers to, they're running is HEAT. And how it works is there's an email address that and the faculty will email, and then the email they receive back is auto-generated. And then there's a help desk, first level support, that is queued. There's been a new ticket request, and then they go in, they look at what the faculty member or staff member wants, and then there's an area where they can make assignments to the appropriate people who then get notified by email, and then they acknowledge that, okay, yes, I have an assignment, I'm updating this ticket, and then when each person is done, they resolve their portion of the ticket, and the last person to work on the ticket will then close the ticket, and another response will go to the person who requested help, that your ticket's been resolved, someone's likely been in contact with you in person, it has this solved your problem, give us a little bit of feedback. So so once the ticket comes in, then the people factor comes into play. They get on the phone, they go visit the faculty member, staff member in their office, do the work, And then the system will then close and produce the auto-generated email, which will then hopefully collect some feedback.
Now, I take it before that, faculty members were used to going to one particular individual. How did you introduce the ticketing system to them? Was that difficult?
Well, actually, the ticketing system existed. There in IT, there's a faculty support liaison line. It's like a hotline at the bat phone that they can pick up and call. And it's only available to tenured faculty. So that was actually implemented by the former CIO. And what they're doing now with that is there's still that single faculty support liaison, but there's a crew of people that are there. So if someone is sick, if that faculty liaison is sick, it will be rerouted to one of the other help desk analysts who will pick up the phone and help the faculty member. So they really can do either, but some faculty prefer email and don't really want to talk to anybody, and then other faculty want to pick up the phone and talk to a live person, so we make both available.
That's the retail approach.
Yeah.
It's like the style that they're most comfortable with, that's what they make the customized service to fit their needs.
Yeah, similarly in the library, we've tried to make every possible entry point open to faculty. So if they want to call the reference desk, that's okay. And if they want to call their favorite librarian, that's okay. And if they want to call the faculty services librarian, send an email, do chat, everything. And we also have implemented a sort of a ticketing system, which we may be changing, but right now we're using Question Point, which queues up requests and allows us to put in input and allows us to get outside people outside the library involved in the projects and track everything. So I'm not sure whether we'll end up using a combination of these two products or find 1/3 do everything product or something, but the idea is to sort of integrate these workflows a little bit more.
And it certainly has helped as academic technology has moved into the library from out of the IT department. That in itself has helped us in a huge way. And, as John mentioned this morning, we're in the middle of reorganization. That reorganization may entail moving some of the media services into the library and another more collaborative relationship with the IT department rather than separate hubs as they exist now in terms of coordinating the services through the ticketing system.
Is this, was your IT department ever in the library before, and did they separate, or have they always been separate? So are we doing a shift back and forth?
No, IT's always been separate from the library. We have our own small IT unit within the library that does basically our own staff's desktop support plus support of our difficult catalog that needs a lot of support. That may change, but they've always been separate IT. Yes?
Did the sort of Mind Portal work group, if it takes hold and reaches some sort of critical mass, thinking about assessment, you distinguish between library services and other services. Is the professor going to make that distinction?
Absolutely not.
So how would you make those assessments?
Well,
then?
because you have to, the assessment is associated with the project. So everyone who is on that project is being assessed. And then we can parse that out as to, the library's role in this was successful, the IT's role in this was not successful.
So for example, using Bob's group, that a manager somewhere would say, this was library stuff, and we're going to bring this on. This is where we could improve, or this was great. This was the media services.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, according to Ben, and I don't think he put this in here, but I had a long meeting with him, and he said that most of the time when the faculty do respond to the feedback, they usually do give comments. And so you can get, it's not just, a 4, you got a 4. It's, well, this went well, this didn't go well. So we're hoping that we can dig that out, and if necessary, if it's a big enough project, and certainly if there were issues that the faculty member was not happy with, I think we could follow up, with a phone call. Other questions?
Yeah, the professor spoke about how you can't ask faculty what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to solve that
Do you
problem.
have a menu of what you
Yeah.
can do, or is it?
Denise has already actually done some of that in the past with her own website, where she sort of has ideas about what could be done with technology, and we're going to try to expand that this summer. We hired a graduate student, actually now a graduate, with a education technology background, who is going to create some kind of a site for us, probably web-based, that will have demonstration videos of, well, here's how Bob Bourdon used this, and here's this neat new gadget that maybe you're interested in this, and we talked to you about how this would work. So we're going to start with that website. Then we're going to try to invite faculty for like showcases, you know, and make it comfortable for them to stop by and see us and talk to us about, well, you know, just get the conversation going. As Bob said, you know, once June got that wiki form, he realized, oh, well, maybe she could also do this. So if we can get that conversation going with faculty, I think.
Well, it's also with the triage team, the proposal is that they meet once per semester with each faculty that they, you know, who's interested in meeting with them to assess their needs, and then take the needs back to the team to parse out the various parts. That's a perfect opportunity to say, well, you need a website for your course, but have you ever thought of using a wiki? You know, and like, oh, what's a wiki? You know, or have you, you know, you have these slides for your class. Have you ever thought of using PowerPoint? You know, that's on a one-on-one personal interface that's not humiliating in a public way of introducing technology and making suggestions to faculty as once a semester in the team as that they meet, you know, semester by semester, the knowledge base of the faculty would grow in terms of the types of tools that they can use.
I just want to add to that, because I think in our case, especially with regards to the time factor, you know, taking advantage of the time when faculty have to talk to you. Faculty have to talk to me a lot more than they have to talk to other librarians, whether they like to or not. So that's why I've been successful building a lot of relationships and rapport with professors. So what we've done recently is when I have to go visit a faculty member in the office, I'll run upstairs and say, hey, June, I'm going to meet with Professor Hansen, come with me. Let me introduce you to him. And then we sneak in, hey, did you know?
Hey, have you ever thought about using a wiki for that? That would be a great idea.
So that's just some success as well, is taking advantage of opportunities where you do have their attention and making those suggestions. And it's helpful if we can grab someone from media services or library or whoever that person, so we talk about that point of entry that the person they're most comfortable with. It's not that that's the only person they talk to, but it's using that person they go to then reach out to the other people involved and say, hey, I'm going to go meet with this person. Let me introduce you to them, and then we can kind of have a quick stand-up meeting, and you can get in those other.
As opposed to having this Karen slide with the little figures showing, you know, the line of people standing outside the door. They certainly do not want to meet with each of us individually every semester. So,
because you call up and say, hey, can we have an appointment to talk about all of these things? Likely we'll say no. But when they really want you to come by, and generally, I've never had a faculty member say, why did you bring this person? You know, they're actually very excited, and we end up having them.
It's sometimes scary when you're out of
You might be opening yourself up for more work.
Well, thank you very